What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and this video is sponsored by Tango Papa Toiletry Supplies. When you need to take care of number two as number one's trying to shoot you, you need the most advanced cleanliness and protection ever. So try Tango Papa Camouflage Toilet Paper. We've been protecting your little soldiers for 45 years. But all kidding aside, I also do video game reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. And today is going to be the review for Batman: The Enemy Within, a Telltale series episode 2. The game hits consoles and PC October 3rd. And of course, unless someone went absolutely insane between episodes and someone said, you know what, Bob, let's just go ahead and switch over to charcoal for our drying medium. Overall, I'm going to be covering story and fun factor more than I will be graphics and others, though I will touch on them, but I think that's expected in an episodic title. Let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for Batman: The Enemy Within, a Telltale series episode 2. Uncomfortable male bonding, alcohol's great medicine, and new meaning to cold shoulder. Graphics are up first. You know, like I said in the last video, I actually like the way this looks, and aside from a strange stutter during the first intro movie of this episode, the game was actually completely smooth at 4K, which isn't bad knowing the history that the Telltale games have had in the past with frame rate, while on the 3 test systems, this all seemed completely shored up. Now, as I brought up before, the game and its fiction is a slightly different telling, and that does mean that design is going to enter the discussion here, especially when it comes to bad guys. And I have to say, for me, it's a bit Adam West and a bit Christian Bale. It just sort of depends on which of the characters we're talking about. For example, take last episode. The Riddler was unique looking, that's for sure. And like him or hate him, it was a style that seems to have emboldened Telltale a bit for this episode. So we have a series of newcomers who were all shown in the newest and most recent trailer. And I gotta say, I dig the at least slightly more realistic Bane, and while still looking like he was made out of whatever testosterone wicks off dragons' balls like a rain shower during mating season, he still looked a bit more natural than other versions in other games have. Freeze also looked excellent with that thin doctor presiding over his Ice Queen's coffin kind of look, versus, say, the muscle-bound or even heavily armored appearance we've seen before, and his demeanor and style fit perfectly. But I have to say, I really did not like Harley at all. She looks off to me, and I'm not sure why, but she reminds me a bit of the Riddler last episode for other people, where her appearance appears to be a bit more of a middle ground that doesn't really hit comic cool, nor does it hit the murderous modern of the recent movie that she was actually in. I'm sure some people will like the design, as it's far from being poor, but your mileage may vary. As a package, I have to say, I dig the performance across most of the systems, with a couple issues on the console, and the look of almost everyone, but there were a couple missteps. Sound, music, and voice.
No. You are providing our escape.
Waller, on the move with targets. Track the signal. Get your people here, now.
We've got your signal locked.
You ain't like these others. Bane's a powder keg. Freeze. Well, you saw Freeze. John's sweet. And
just think, you could come into work on Monday dressed just like me.
Is this some kind of joke?
And you know what? Let's do music first. This is not something I was expecting. As we dive deeper into the story, which I will say up front, I'm digging far more than the last season. The music constitutes a continuous series of surprises for me. Here we have this discordant element wrapping up the main villains in their own unique tones. Staticky, strange synths all remind us of the technobabble that Freeze has at his command as he walks around and attempts to enact the physical embodiment of the word sinister. But to me, it's the odd mixture of element scenes with Harley that I absolutely adore. While I'm not in love with her look, as I said before, the tracks that play, like pianos almost mixed into cathedral-like organs and horns and strings, are amazing. But then, just when you think, okay, I sort of get where they're going with this, they throw in the oddest, almost country guitar thrum in there that comes in and out before you know it, but sort of jars you. Now, knowing Harley and understanding her psyche, this works epically well to keep you in this odd feeling of unease throughout all of her interactions. Overall, I would say I adore the music in this one, even more than the last episode. Let's talk about sound. So, as you will remember, I did have 1 or 2 issues regarding sound in the original series and the first episode for sure, but even that's been pretty much cleaned up here, and episode 2 offers an improvement to the overall soundscape. Either in the attention to detail or just in the layering, it has been fixed. And of course, some of these changes will be connected to the choices that you make in the game, but even little things like the tonal impact of an armored truck rear storage area on the voices of the people within, or the rattly thrap sound of a far-off machine gun down a street, it really works well. Also, kudos to these guys. There's one part here that I don't really want to spoil at all, but I'll just say this. It was incredibly difficult to listen to, not because it was bad, but because it truly sounded like someone had just turned someone else's joints into the results of a juice machine set to mulch. It was nasty, but it was actually done in a very cool way. And of course, that brings us to voice. Now, when it comes to performance, this is just an excellent improvement in a couple areas. First, we see a greatly improved from the first episode side roster, and the low energy might have just free-based Paxel right before voiceover started enemy cast has been replaced with unique, if not much more interesting to listen to, bad guys of the domain. The newcomers to the story, who take a massive chunk of the almost hour and a half of playtime away from the regulars, aside from Bruce of course, do an excellent job. Less successful is Bane, who comes across like homicidal maniac 131 from a Quentin Tarantino movie, and while I didn't expect for them to have him talking in iambic pentameter, his general presence is hurt a bit by that typical bad guy tense on words and structure. It's not bad, it's just not really surprising, and it doesn't elevate him either in action or in his language. While Bruce, Gordon, and others did fairly well, though again, they aren't in the game much except for Bruce. But again, while continually surprising me is of course John Doe, and while this episode doesn't have a scene that really lives up to that uncomfortable bit in the funeral in the first episode, he does continue to rock back and forth somewhere between oddly humorous and creepy visiting uncle. It's not only what he says, but it's how he says it in the excellent way in which everything is just off balance, just a bit out there, and in perfect John Doe fashion, it doesn't matter what he's saying, it always seems like he's hinging on a little bit crazy. Overall though, I'd say as a package, the voice is great. Gameplay. Okay, so episode 2 continues the story of the first episode and Batman dealing with the physical and mental damage that's occurred after his dealings with the Riddler, and while now trying to find out about the shadowy group that the Riddler was actually in. And I have to say the subtitle of this episode should have just been called Repercussions, because while we saw Alfred taking a hit for some of us in the first season, episode 2 in this season already has some pretty incredible moments where you think to yourself, so this is the enemy within. No, maybe this is. No, maybe this is. I bet it's this. Bruce battles with poor decisions and some pretty serious consequences right from the get-go, and I absolutely dig it. It really does snug you into the idea that at the very least this is a bit more dangerous both personally and to his comrades than some other Batman games and even movies would ever have you think, and as we've seen in episode 1, no one's safe. Strangely enough, that is what makes episode 2 a bit of a disappointment as well, because much of what made the previous season and episode fun was the switch-ups and the bottled humor and the variety on top of that danger. In this episode, there's very little ability to play off the duality of Bruce and Bat at all. You're just Bruce for almost all of it. And at times, the choices you make are all even more contained in a story that feels bigger than this episode and results in a very little immediate consequences. Now, does this mean that Telltale's gone the other route, listening to players about their choices not seeming to make a difference, and now everything is a slower, more percolating decision of terrible choices and bad results? I do not know, but I will say that it does feel like that. And that's fine, it'll just take some getting used to for a lot of us, because where this episode hits a stumbling block or two is the fact that while the first episode tried to mix in that gameplay, we don't have as much as people probably would expect for this episode. And I'd be lying if I didn't say when it was all said and done, I thought to myself, did friggin' anything actually just happen? Because as I said before, the story appears to be you trying to go undercover and infiltrate a group of criminals that might be making a new organization in the fiction. But it's also offset by horribly contrived elements of mending stories together to keep other characters relevant. Like meeting up in an elevator in one scene with a super high-ranking official in Wayne Enterprises who has a bone to pick with you, but also seems hell-bent on causing the world's first elevator-assisted suicide by backtalking a person who is carrying a bloody sledgehammer and dresses like a goddamn clown and the Queen of Diamonds had a kid together. Or, in the same scene, finding someone in the same secret and locked room that you just got into on a random night during a random week who just happens to absolutely be of importance to you and demands a choice from Bruce that's just sort of hilarious in its timing. This isn't the friggin' Vampire Diaries. You don't stop in the middle of the battle or in the middle of an operation and talk about your feelings. Do you like me? What about now? Are you thinking about me? What about now? It absolutely makes no sense, and it hurts the delivery. And while some of this may sound bad, I have to say the game has some great scenes. Alfred and Bruce's discussion in a rainy room at Wayne Manor is excellent, both as a short warning from an elder statesman to a risky middle-aged crime fighter, but also shows how to properly frame, with the rain lightly patting against the window, the sound of it and the wind barely audible, and the ruffle of clothes as two men uncomfortably try to discuss death without actually saying the word. It is very well done, and I've noticed that for every single episode, even last season, there was always one or two scenes that just really hit home. This is one of them. As a package, this episode, I would say, does deliver, but in a slightly different way, and it is more truncated down when it comes to gameplay than I think I would have liked. Fun factor. You know, it may sound like I didn't have any fun. I did a good deal of it. It was just less than the first episode, and some of that's to be expected as they try to be somewhat self-contained stories while also telling the main story, and it does feel like they're going out on a limb here and changing some things. And some of the choices you make, you know, are long-term and certainly won't be ignored, but it'll just be interesting to see how they go about stretching out those choices and making the more day-to-day episodic choices justified. As you guys know, on episodic games, I rate titles as a buy it now or wait kind of situation. This is actually a wait. This is an episode that I don't feel is nearly as strong as number one. It's still good and beats out a lot of what Telltale does, and we still see the technological improvements with better sound and music and so forth, but it is far more contained on the gameplay element and does not play off that duality of Bruce and Batman that I would have liked to have seen. It does start out with some scenes that are sort of action-packed, but they die off rather quickly. So that's it for me. I want to thank you for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked the video, give it a thumbs down. Maybe check out Twitter or Patreon. Patreon's how I continue to give you guys reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.